Boys and girls, today we are going to take up the magnetic properties of solids. These things, as I considered last time, may it be electrical properties, may it be magnetic, may it be dielectric. These things are in the domains of physics, electronics, and electronics engineering. So my knowledge is limited. So whatever I will be saying, that will be restricted to maximum use in your chemistry tests. And of course, I will not try to uh, compromise with the concepts. I will not at all compromise with the concepts. The magnetic, behavior of a solid. Most of the solids are paramagnetic. Paramagnetic means they have one or more unpaired electrons. One or more unpaired electrons. So most of the solids, they have unpaired electrons and they are paramagnetic. And all these solids are paramagnetic above certain temperature. There are few which are paramagnetic at room temperature. All others, they are paramagnetic at high temperature, because at high temperature, the unpaired electrons, individual spin moments, they are randomly oriented. For example, at high temperature, supposing you have hundreds and thousands of atoms having unpaired electrons, these unpaired electrons are randomly oriented at high temperature. So the resultant magnetic moment is zero. So a paramagnetic substance has a net magnetic moment zero, and those which are room temperature paramagnetic, we call them paramagnetic. But even other magnetic substances like ferro, antiferro, ferri, all these can be converted to paramagnetic at high temperature, because whatever orientation of the individual electron spins are there at low temperature will be destroyed. They will go for a disorderly orientation, and hence they will cancel out. The net magnetic moment will be zero, because the individual moments, they are distributed in a random orientations, and the net resultant magnetic moment is zero. Now, before we discuss about diamagnetic, which is a different type, which has no unpaired electron, absolutely electrons are paired, that is a separate case. These substances are limited, but majority of the substances have one or more unpaired electrons, right? So out of them, paramagnetic are the ones which are room temperature paramagnetic. They are slightly attracted by a permanent magnet, because their spins are aligned in the direction of the magnetic field, the external magnetic field, and hence there is a small attraction, because they do not have a strong domain. I'll tell you what is a domain. The individual spins are scattered, so they will be slightly oriented when it is subjected to an external magnetic field. So they will show some magnetism. That's temporary. The moment you remove the external magnet, the magnetic nature will vanish. So they can't be permanently magnetized like the others. And they are slightly attracted when you keep it under external magnetic field. They'll be slightly attracted because the net moment is not high, because they do not have an orderly arranged domains. And I'll tell you about the others. They have individual spin moments scattered randomly. But when you talk about ferromagnetic or all others, the brothers, the sisters of ferro, antiferro and ferri. In fact, these two are more related because they are, this is supposing this is the elder brother or elder sister, this is the smaller sister. All these can be permanently magnetized, but ferromagnetic, it is magnetized to a large extent. It can be converted to a strong permanent magnet by magnetization technique. You know from your school how by single touch, double touch method, a ferromagnetic substance like iron, like cobalt, like nickel. There are so many other alloys which can be ferromagnetic, which can be easily magnetized on a permanent basis. So what happens to ferromagnetic? Because in ferromagnetic, the individual moments of electrons, they remain in an orderly manner. This is called a domain. You just listen to me, don't write. And there is another domain in another direction. This is a domain. So orderly arranged domains containing a large number of individual magnets, you can call it molecular magnets or atomic magnets, because each atom has unpaired electron, one or more unpaired electron. So they form an assembly. That assembly is called a domain. There is large order. All of them are aligned in the same direction, but the different domains are oriented randomly. So at room temperature or in the absence of magnetic field, these individual domains are scattered randomly. So the net moment again is zero, just like paramagnetic. But when you apply the external magnetic field, then these domains, all of them are oriented, aligned in the direction of the external magnetic field. And once they are oriented, you remove the magnetic field, then they will not be scattered the way they were previously. So they will be permanently, and they will be attracted strongly, because each domain has a strong net moment. But in paramagnetic, there is no domain. Individual molecular or atomic magnets, they are scattered. So the orientation takes place very little during the application of external field. So they are not permanently magnetized. But these three, they have domains. Each domain, the molecular magnets, individual spins, they are oriented in the same direction. On application of external field, all these domains, they are aligned in the same direction. Now this one which was lying downwards, they will be also coming in the direction of this magnetic field. This one also will be coming in the direction of magnetic field. In this manner, the net resultant magnetic moment is be very, very high. And that too, it won't be lost. It will remain, even if you remove. But in case of ferrimagnetic, they cancel out. They cancel out to a large extent. But there will be some residual. Each domain has one up, one down, one up and one down. But there is a little resultant for each domain, unlike the case of ferromagnetic, where all the individual molecular magnets are aligned in the same direction. But here there are domains. But I can show you here. This is the elder brother ferro, where this is a domain. This is an individual domain. See, this is an individual domain. And you will see ferri. I'm just switching from ferro to ferri. In ferri, The domains are there, no doubt, but the magnitudes are not same. As a result, there will be a net resultant magnetic moment in each domain. Now, when such a ferrimagnetic substance will be magnetized, there will be definitely magnetization. They will be definitely converted to permanent magnet. But the resultant magnetic strength of the magnet produced out of the ferrimagnetic substance is less. So the extent of magnetization is less compared to ferro. Therefore, I told ferro is the big sister and ferri is the small sister. If ferro is Jasmine Lenka and ferri is Manaswini Lenka, I don't know. Please correct me if I am wrong. Not now, later. So definitely, since it is a classroom program, I am really not formal. I am informal. And since I have a mind to complete the chapter, therefore, I might not be whiling away time. Otherwise, nobody can prevent the instructor to play with the children during the time of teaching. Particularly, this instructor will never ever forget that. And in antiferromagnetic, the individual domains have no net dipole moment, magnetic dipole moment. All the individual molecular magnets, they lie alternately in opposite directions, so the net moment is zero. So it is this, if this is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. And all of them, they become paramagnetic above a certain temperature called critical temperature. But this critical and the critical temperature in gaseous state, they have nothing in common. That critical temperature relates to liquefaction of gases, and this critical temperature is related to converting a magnetic substance, ferri, antiferro, into paramagnetic substance, which cannot be magnetized. And all these, this is strongly attracted by a magnet. This is less strongly attracted by a magnet. This is least strongly attracted. This also can be magnetized to a very, very small extent. Because on the application of external field, some, dismantling of this order will happen. Some dismantling of this order will happen, and it will acquire some net magnetic field, and therefore all these three can be magnetized. But this is to the large extent. The amount of external the amount of the magnetic strength is maximum here. The attraction is maximum to a external magnet. This is less, this is least. And I'll just tell you what are diamagnetic. Diamagnetic has nothing in common. They do not have any domains. They have all electron pairs. So the individual electrons, they get cancelled and they do not produce any molecular magnets. But what happens when you apply an external magnetic field to such a substance having no unpaired electrons, all the electrons are paired. In such a case, some different mechanism will happen. That is, the electron cloud, they will rotate, circulate in opposite direction with respect to the external magnetic field. If the external magnetic field is in this direction, then the electron cloud as a whole will have a motion, circular motion, a rotatory motion in opposite direction, so that the magnetic field produced by the motion of this electron cloud will oppose the magnetic field of the external magnet. So by that, a mild repulsive forces will be created, not attractive. So the diamagnetic substances are slightly repelled if you put it under external magnetic field. So this phenomenon is called diamagnetic anisotropy. So I would not like to, although I can expand this further, what is diamagnetic anisotropy, but just a little bit, that these electron clouds, they do not have individual magnetic moment. Just like other ferri, antiferro, they have they have magnetic moments. But these do not have any magnetic moment. But when you apply the magnetic field, external magnetic field, the electron cloud as a whole, they get induced to circulate and form a magnetic field opposite to the direction of the applied magnetic field. And by that, it is having a repulsive effect. And this circulation in opposite direction is called diamagnetic anisotropy. Now there are examples: sodium chloride, silicon dioxide, calcium carbonate, titanium dioxide. These are diamagnetic substances. I told you, paramagnetic substances are attracted by external magnet weakly due to spin magnet moment. That the individual spin magnetic moments are in the absence of external field, there is no net moment, but they can be magnetized due to small alignment of these individual moments, but loses magnetic property in the absence of external field. So the magnetization is temporary, so cannot be permanently magnetized because they do not have any domains. They have individual moments scattered in all directions. Now, the examples of room temperature paramagnetic is copper, 1 unpaired electron, copper oxide, nickel, titanium oxide, so many. Now, coming to, I'll show you the pictures which will make your understanding still more consolidated. Now, see ferro, strongly attracted by external magnetic field, can be permanently magnetized. Strong magnetic moments of oriented domains. The domains are oriented due to aligned unpaired electrons in the same direction of a large number of atoms to form a domain. But the domains are scattered randomly. The domains cancel out in the unmagnetized solid as the domains are randomly oriented. On magnetization, these domains are aligned in the direction of the external magnetic field and they are permanently magnetized and produce a large net magnetic moment in the ferromagnetic substance, which can be now called a magnet, a made magnet, which was ferromagnetic, but now it is a magnet. Now there are so many examples of ferromagnetic substances: iron, cobalt, nickel. These are the elemental gadolinium. And the compounds are europium oxide, chromium 4 oxide. This is an alloy of neodymium, iron, and boron. Samarium cobalt alloy, yttrium cobalt alloy. So there are so many ferromagnetic substances. I told you the critical temperature is in this case called Curie's temperature. In case of ferro and ferri, eldest brother and the just middle brother, their critical temperatures are called Curie's temperature. But the youngest sister, brother, that is antiferro, that critical temperature has a different name. That is called the Neal's temperature, Tn, and this is Tc, critical or Curie. Critical is the common word for all the three, but Curie is the specific name for ferro and ferri. Now I'll give you a short note, don't worry at all. Antiferromagnetic, I told you the description when I made, I first talked about ferry, then antiferro. Since I have already discussed, so let me first take off antiferro. The net magnetic moment is zero in individual domains. The net magnetic moment is zero as the electron spins are oppositely oriented in equal numbers. Examples are many. On magnetization, a very small net magnetic moment is retained due to slight distraction, disorientation of these individual domains. Like ferry. Ferry, I have already discussed, like ferry. But less than ferry. The extent of magnetization that antiferro gets is less than even ferry and exhibits this ferromagnetism, antiferromagnetism at low temperature, that is below Neel's temperature. Above Neel temperature, all become paramagnetic, all the magnetic. And ferry, the electron spins are aligned in the domains, but they do not cancel out completely. So there is a net magnetic moment in each domain. On magnetization, the net magnetic moment, though it is greater than antiferro, but less than ferro. Ferry is less than ferro. Due to large compensation in each domain, there is a large compensation. There is a small little, net magnetic moment in each domain. They were scattered, but now they are oriented. Even then, the net magnetic moment cannot be comparable with ferro, will be less, but greater than antiferro. Antiferro, initially the domains had zero magnetic moment. Therefore, in the hierarchy, in the order, ferro greater than ferry greater than antiferro. And the examples of ferry is our famous magnetic oxide, which you know has a inverse spinel structures and similar structures like zinc iron oxide. This is also inverse spinel structure. In place of ferrous, you have zinc, copper, magnesium. So all of them change to paramagnetic at its corresponding Curie's temperature. That is critical temperature, and here also we call Curie's temperature. And for magnetic oxide, it is 850. For as we know, for iron loses ferromagnetism at the Curie temperature of 1000. Iron. Every ferro has its own Curie's temperature. I'm talking about iron here. Iron cannot be permanently magnetized if you heat it above 1000. So below 1000, it will be ferro, but all of them, all the three can be converted to para. The domains will be all dismantled and you cannot magnetize them even to a little extent. It will be only like para, will be temporarily magnetized, but not permanently. Now I hope you are following me and now see these domains. This is antiferro, where all the this is an individual, this is an individual domain. The individual domain is having no net dipole moment. This is ferry, the just younger sister of ferro, where the magnitudes are not same. This is bigger, greater magnitude. The opposite one is a smaller magnitude. So there is a net magnetic moment even in the unmagnetized solid state. But ferro, this is the lower one. So there are so many. This is a domain, this is a domain, this is a domain. All the domains are individually having high dipole moment. But when they are subjected to external field, they slowly and steadily, when you go for a number of single touch, double touch techniques, then they will be permanently aligned. All these individual domains will be permanently aligned in the same direction, and they will have high magnetic strength. The attraction is more, and they, for a long time, if you apply, they will be irreversibly aligned in the direction of the magnetic field. And even if you remove the magnetic field, the magnetism in the ferromagnetic substance will not be lost. Now, let us write down something. What we learned in a little, these are things which are more of just understanding and informative. So, the extensive note I used to give in the other ones, the metallic crystals, the holes, and the ionic crystals, that thing we will not do. Now, let's just write down. This villain is always just let us write down that magnetic properties of solids. First we shall write diamagnetic. First, let us finish. No unpaired electron. Weakly repelled by an external magnet. And this is the reason I just sound you. This is due to a phenomenon called diamagnetic anisotropy. Anisotropy. And examples to leave space. I will browse through the PPTs where you write down some of the examples which I do not remember almost completely. There are few examples. Sodium chloride is one. There is no unpaired electron. There are many such ionic compounds. They belong to that category. All ionic compounds, they do not have any unpaired electrons. So sodium chloride is just a representative compound. So all the ionic compounds, they come under that category. Even zinc doesn't have an unpaired electron. Magnesium doesn't have an unpaired. These are diamagnetic solids. And they do not produce any magnetic effect. They're repelled. What to speak of producing any magnetic effect? They're repelled. Now coming to the other three cases today. Other three cases, paramagnetic, this villain, ferro, should I write ferry first? I think I should write ferry first. And the smallest, the littlest sister is antiferro. Why usually in the books you find ferro then antiferro? Because ferro and antiferro. Ferro is all the individual spins are on the same direction in a domain, but in antiferro it is exactly opposite direction. The net moment is zero. That is why they place antiferro just below ferro. But I will make a change. Ferrimagnetic and anti-ferromagnetic. Anti-ferromagnetic. Now, first we shall take up paramagnetic. The individual molecular or atomic magnets are randomly oriented. So net magnetic moment mu, let us say mu, let us call it mu is 0. The individual molecular magnets are randomly oriented, so net magnetic moment is 0. No domain formation. Here, in paramagnetic, there is no domains. That is, an assembly of oriented molecular magnets is called a domain. No domain formation. Should I go to the next page, please? So, weakly attracted by a magnet. By alignment of these molecular magnets, these individual molecular or atomic magnets. Cannot, paramagnetic substances are weakly attracted by an external magnetic field due to the alignment of the molecular magnets, but cannot be permanently magnetized. That means it is temporarily magnetized, not permanent. Cannot be permanently magnetized. And most important among them, leave a space for some important examples. Leave a space. Important is all others are converted to paramagnetic at or above a critical temperature called Curie's temperature, for ferro and Ferri, and Neal's temperature for anti-ferro. Magnetic I am not writing, you can write of your own. Magnetic term I am missing out. All others are converted to paramagnetic at a higher temperature, and that temperature varies from substance to substance, from solid to solid, at or above a critical temperature called Curie's temperature. Curie's temperature is Tc, or in between bracket write Tc. Or you can call critical temperature also, but critical temperature is the general word. Curie's temperature is specific to ferro and Ferri magnetic, but Neal's temperature for anti-ferromagnetic. Done? Done, Mitra Babu? Where is, I'm sorry, I'm not putting, Sambit Sahu raised his hand. Yes. So what I'm supposed to do is to look to the list, always as a ready reckoner to see all of you who is doing what, who is dozing, who is talking to his or her mom. Okay, we'll go to the next page for ferromagnetic. There are large number of domains, magnetic domains, which are randomly oriented in an unmagnetized solid. there are large number of, this is a domain, this is another domain. You can draw the diagram. This is another domain. These are the domains which are randomly oriented. But each domain, I will write down in the next page about each domain. You know, there are so many different ways of orientation, but in each domain, they're all aligned in the same direction. Okay. But in each domain, the individual spins or molecular magnets, individual spins are aligned in the same direction, are aligned in the same direction. To have a large net magnetic moment, net mu. Let me write down mu for magnetic moment, net mu for each domain. But the resultant of all these net moments of the hundreds and thousands of domains is zero in the unmagnetized state. But they are strongly attracted by an external magnet, strongly attracted by an external magnet, and can be, let us start. Are you listening to me? Yes? Are you able to see my screen? Yes. Okay. Okay, hands down. So these ferromagnetic substances are strongly attracted by an external magnetic field and can be permanently magnetized. By the orientation of all domains, all the domains in the direction of the external field. And you leave a space for some examples. Iron has a Curie temperature of 1000 degrees Celsius. I have already told you that these three can be converted to paramagnetic, at which they can't be permanently magnetized above a particular critical temperature, which varies from solid to solid. And for iron, the Curie's temperature is 1000 or above. Then you leave bit of space, then two, and then three or something, three or four. Diamagnetic, then paramagnetic, then ferromagnetic, then ferri. That is the order. You know, in this case, the individual domains have some resultant dipole moments. So let me draw like this, and then I will use another this is a domain. The spins are lying in opposite directions. And compensate to a large extent, but have a net small magnetic moment. because the magnitudes are not same. The individual spins, molecular magnets or the atomic magnets do not have the identical magnitude. So even though the individual spins lie in opposite direction, there is a large compensation, cancellation of the moments. In place of cancellation, I'm writing compensation to a large extent, but there is a net, small magnetic moment. So this can also be attracted and magnetized, but to a lesser extent, than ferro. And you leave a space for writing examples. This can be attracted and magnetized, but to a lesser extent, I'm repeating lesser extent, to a lesser extent than, ferromagnetic substance. Then leave a space. We'll go to the next page. Then 5 is antiferro. Is just opposite of ferro. And I forgot to give you an example. Here, write down magnetic oxide has a TC of 850 degrees centigrade. This is an example, classic example of a ferrimagnetic substance is ferrosulfuric oxide or magnetic oxide, which has an inverse spinel structure, has a TC, Curie temperature of 850. Now, done? Now, antiferromagnetic, I shall write down, this is the individual domain. There is no net mu in individual domains. Because obviously they remain in opposite directions and the magnitudes are same. There is no net mu. That means mu is equal to 0. There is no net mu in individual domains, but can be magnetized to a very small extent. Even less than ferri. Because by that, some of the orientations of the individual, domains will be disoriented by applying this single touch, double touch method for a large amount of time or a long time, then that will slightly disorient and produce a small little magnetic field. And loses ferrimagnetism, loses magnetism. I write down magnetism, antiferromagnetism, obviously. Magnetism above. Can you tell me what is the temperature called? What is the temperature called here? Which is the critical temperature called? The Néel temperature. Néel above the critical temperature is here called Néel temperature. Tn. So this is the thing. Let us write down some of the examples from here. Write down some of the examples I have already told. In diamagnetic, we have silica, calcium carbonate, titania, all ionic compounds. Written, only write down the examples from here. Over. Then some examples of para at room temperature. Why I say room temperature? Because all the ferro, peri, anti-ferro, they can be converted to para. Para at above or at or above critical temperature. So there are many room temperature paramagnetic substances like copper, copper oxide, nickel, titanium oxide, etc. And this we have already written, and some of the examples of ferromagnetic substance. These three things, four things were known before this. But these are new additions, new research. The alloys, iron, cobalt, nickel, gadolinium, europium oxide, chromium 4 oxide, neodymium, iron, boron alloy, samarium, cobalt alloy, and yttrium, cobalt alloy. In the proportion that I have mentioned, in the stoichiometric proportion, 2:14:1. So we cannot cancel by 2. And if iron loses, already we have written. You don't write Curie's temperature. We have already written that. Have you finished? Yes. Then some of the examples of anti-ferro. No, first ferri is the younger sister of ferro, because there is some net small little magnetic moment in each domain for which its magnetization is little more than anti-ferro. Anti-ferro is 0 for each domain. It has some residual dipole moment, so it is just the younger brother of ferro. The examples are this and this, other, similar type of other, like where ferric ion remains the same, but the divalent can be zinc, can be copper 2+, can be magnesium 2+. Over. Then finally, we have anti-ferro, which have 0 dipole moment for each domain, manganese oxide, manganese dioxide, Mn2O2, this is, manganese peroxide, and this is nickel oxide. These are some of the examples. I couldn't find the Néel temperature. I forgot. I should have given the Néel temperature of some of them. So I will give them in my handout later. Just like I gave the Curie's temperature for the other two, I should have given the Néel temperature of one of these anti-ferromagnetic substance. I'll give that. So this finishes our work on magnetic properties. Dielectric properties are not in your course, but I will tell you, and you write down of your own in your copies looking to my handouts. Dielectric property, what is dielectric constant? What is dielectric property? These are the insulators. Dielectric materials are insulators, but are partially polarized in the presence of electric field. When you apply electric field to a dielectric material, it will be partially polarized, and it will reduce the strength of the external field by cancelling, by compensating a part of the external field. So it is possible to reduce the net magnetic field that it will experience. So that is the dielectric material, and that is characterized by dielectric constant, as we call it, the permittivity of the medium. So that dielectric property of solids, we're not talking of water or any liquid, solids. There are so many types. Piezoelectric means when you apply pressure, just you press, you will develop PD. You get electric current flowing just by pressing, applying pressure to a crystal. You get a PD and current flows. Quartz is an example. Rosselli salt, this is sodium potassium tartarate. Sodium potassium tartarate, tartaric acid salt. This is called Rosselli salt. These are some of the examples of piezoelectric materials. Anti-piezoelectric, the opposite will happen. If you apply PD, then it will show some hip hop motion. Anti-piezoelectric will show mechanical activity, some motion if you apply PD. And I have not given, unfortunately, some examples. I will append some of the anti-piezoelectric material. And this is ferroelectric, where piezoelectric solids having permanent dipole, not induced dipole. They have permanent dipole, like barium titanate, potassium hydrogen phosphate. Anti-ferroelectric, piezoelectric material having zero dipole moment, like lead zirconate. Pyroelectric, by applying heat, PD will be developed. Just not by applying pressure, that is piezo. By applying heat, pyro means heat, a PD will develop. So tartaric acid crystal is one example of a pyroelectric material solids. So you organize of your own, and we will take up today in the coming 20 minutes. I will explain you something which is not in your course, but it will be required. Unless I tell that, then I'm not going to digest any food that I will take. So why the videos of SS vanished, and some others were there, but it vanished ultimately. I told you the day when I'll get all of you in form, that will be the D-Day for me. That means that day my ego will be permanently satiated, and I will be the same old, not in the old sense. I am not old. I am 16, 15 years old. And the same old way that I was handling you, I will, when I will find all of you in form, in video form. Nowhere in the world a teacher is forbidden. You are forbidding me to have a glimpse of my student. Even when I want. I do not want every time. But can you imagine when you are looking at me every time, looking to this bald surface of my head every time? I am forbidden to look a single glimpse, to have a single glimpse of you. What injustice you are inflicting upon me, you can realize. But these good Samaritans like SS and this Swayam Sarangi, they are good Samaritans because they used to show their faces. And sometimes I wonder, do I remember your faces? Have I not forgotten you? Have you given that opportunity to revise your face, your voice? Well, that amply or speaks volumes of the rage that was noticed in your teacher a few days back. Okay, forget about that. I'm not naming anybody here. We will be doing something very, very interesting. That is, you just very attentively listen. The name of the topic, villain. Oh, had you written villain? The name of the topic is crystallographic planes. Write down. Write down. Write down. Are you able to listen to me? Listen to me. Then write down planes and X-ray diffraction. How you find A, the A's length, and the interplanar spacings. Now, see, you know, there are supposing these are the lattice points where the atoms or the ions will sit. And the type of unit cell is variable, like cubic, like rhombic, like, and so many types. Now in a crystal there are several families of parallel planes. For example, if you take this family, supposing you take this family, this is the parallel. The plane will carry the atoms or the ions. This is a family of parallel planes. Supposing you just tilt, you take these atoms into account. May not happen a corresponding atom in this plane, doesn't matter, it can be another plane. So there are so many family of parallel planes. Oh, I'm sorry. So a family of parallel planes will have one thing in common. They are parallel, but they have same interplanar spacing d. This is called interplanar spacing. Therefore, I said I had a wrong drawing. So the interplanar spacing d is constant for a family, and each plane in a family passes through some lattice points, some atoms, some ions, and the rest are parallel. And if this is D1, the other family has D2, and this family has D3, so they have different interplanar spacings, right? So a crystal can have multiple families of parallel planes. And if you just write down what I am doing in a rough sketch, then I will give you, because these are not in your course, but I have prepared so many numericals from it that you will be happy and will easily answer those, right? So each family of planes, crystallographic, these are called crystallographic planes, is characterized by 3 index numbers: H, K, L, with respect to the Cartesian coordinates X, Y, Z. With respect to the 3 axes in the 3 dimension X, Y, Z. So each family is uniquely identified by assigning 3 index numbers. These are called Miller indices. If Miller indices is fixed, the family is fixed. This is with respect to X coordinate, this is with respect to K is with respect to Y coordinate, L is with respect to Z coordinate. It can be, for example, 1, 0, 0. Usually commas are not given. Usually it looks like 100, but it is called 100 plane, family of planes. It can be 001, it can be 010, it can be 111, it can be 110. I'll tell you how easily you can detect the Miller indices. It can be say 011, it can be 010. So there can be, it can be 200. So these are some of the examples I showed you. Then how to find the Miller indices? Will I go to the next page, please? I will demand 15 minutes more time from you. Those who have some other coachings, they are free to leave. But those who haven't, they can continue so that we finish this. And others can watch the video with a pen and paper and can be able to understand. I'm sure about it. Unless and otherwise, you have a preconceived notion that old is always gold and the new things are always bad, as many veterans, heptagenarians, octogenarians, nonagenarians, old people, they have a habit of saying that whatever was there in their times was ideal and now things are getting worse day by day. So this instructor never feels in that way. Any change which appears to be a change may be a better one than the previous one if you have a mind, open mind to accept, to experience for a while. Therefore, I had written in my blog, not in my blog, I will be having a blog very soon in my website where I will be narrating some of my experiences without adopting to any sermonization or any advice, which I always refrain from giving advice. But my analysis, my experience, I will be sharing with my readers. Maybe this, who knows, this site can be extended to others who may not be physically be there with me as a student, but can benefit remotely from the study materials. Whoever will write to me, I can provide them. You can also do that to your friends if they want. But that must be a little bit of restriction. Otherwise, it will be a little cheap, not in pecuniary terms, but in terms of its physical interpretation. Now, let us come back how we can determination of Villen. Determination of Miller indices, HKL. Supposing these are the coordinates, this is the X coordinate, this is the Y coordinate, this is the Z coordinate. And there is a plane here. And these are the unit vectors. Supposing this is A, and this is B, this is C. They are the unit vectors in the three axes. In cubic lattice, A is equal to B is equal to C. But in others, there are differences. For example, in orthorhombic, A is not equal to B, not equal to C. So if A, B, C are the unit vectors in the respective directions, and supposing I draw a plane, I take up a plane from the lattice. One plane from a family is having intercept like this. So the actual intercepts is A by 2. For example, this is A by 2, just the midpoint of the unit vector, and B and 2C. These are the actual intercepts. So the Miller indices are determined from the intercepts. Supposing a particular plane is having intercept in the x-axis A by 2, B and 2C. Now, what you do, you divide by the respective unit vectors. so that A, B, C terms will be abolished. So you get 1 by 2, 1 and 2. So that means A by 2 by A, B by B, 2C by C. So if you divide each of the intercept by the respective unit vectors, you are devoid of the unit vector and get a pure number, half, 1, 2. And the reciprocal of this, the reciprocal of these is Miller indices. So I'll go to the next slide. Next, if you permit me. And where is Miss Bhol? Are you here, or you have left for other coaching, or you were not able to connect? No, she is not there. Doesn't matter. This will not be required at all for most. But this is very interesting. Now, the reciprocal of the fractional, these are called fractional intercepts. And the previous ones are called fractional intercepts, where you divide by the unit vectors and although 2 is not a fraction, but it is called fractional intercepts. Now, now the reciprocal of these fractional intercepts are Miller indices, HKL. And if again there is a fraction, if there is a fraction, it is eliminated by suitable multiplication. For example, here we got this one, half, 1, 2. The reciprocal is 2, 1 and 1 by 2. So we cannot have a fraction in the HKL. Now you have to multiply by 2, so that it becomes 4, 2, 1. And in fact, you have to finally remove the commas. 4 to 1, it will appear as if it is 421. It's actually 4 to 1 plane. The family of planes will be uniquely identified as 4 to 1. The plane which will have an intercept A by 2 in the x-axis, B in the y-axis, and 2C in the z-axis. And its subsequent parallel planes have the same Miller indices, because these arbitrary set of coordinates can be shifted to the next position to get the same intercepts for the other parallel plane. So once you get the Miller indices for one plane, all the family of planes, all the planes in the same family, they have the same Miller indices. So I have a question for you to do. If you can do it, I will be extremely happy. The question is like this. Supposing you have a plane, you have a parallel plane like this, which is here. So the actual intercept, this is x, this is y, this is z. It is standing somewhere here. That means A, and tell me what is the intercept in the y-axis and what is the intercept in the z-axis. It is parallel to y-axis. It is parallel to z-axis. So in fact, it is parallel to, this plane is parallel to the yz plane. So obviously this plane which is parallel to the yz plane will meet the y-axis at infinite distance and z-axis also at infinite distance. So it will be a infinite infinite, the first step. The second step, divided by b, a divided by b divided by c, will be 1, again infinity, again infinity, infinity by something into something will be same as infinity. This is a by a, infinity by b, infinity by c. So then reciprocal of infinity is 0. So this is 1 0 0 plane, and we write ultimately 1 0 0, no commas in between. So 0 means that plane is parallel to that particular axis. If there are two zeros, then the plane is parallel to a particular plane, axial plane. If the y and z counterparts are 0, then it is parallel to the yz plane. If it is 0 1 0, then such a plane will be definitely parallel to xz plane, like this. If it is say 0 0 1, then it is, you know, like this, it is parallel to the xy plane. Similarly, if I'll give you now one more question to are you writing? Are you writing, guys? You know, slowly and steadily guys are depleting from the meeting, say class. Doesn't matter, because this I do not want, I did not want to discuss with all. Of course, some of you might, who have left for some valid reason, can definitely check with my video. Now see, supposing I give a plane which has one leg here at exactly at A, and another leg exactly at B, and it is standing straight parallel to the z-axis. So what are the Miller indices for such a plane which is, you can supposing this is also A, or say B, doesn't matter, B by B, A by A, nothing to worry about, but it is parallel to z-axis. Now what will be the designation, the HKL, for such a plane which is having a leg, left leg on A, right leg on B, not A by 2, not B by 2, but A and B, and standing straight, vertical, parallel to the z-axis. So Abhilash, I am very happy to see you in the hand raise. You know, you guys, Arpita, Manaswini, Payal, Priyanka, Subhasri is missing today. Subhasri, so all of you, Sonalisa, you must always raise your hand. Only when you are alert, you can raise your hand, and only when you are not shy of committing mistakes, because I told you that we can commit mistakes. So we should not be afraid of committing mistakes. That doesn't mean that we will deliberately commit mistakes. So yes, anybody, Abhilash, please tell. Abhilash.
Yes, sir. Is it 110?
Precisely 110 plane. Why? Because this is A, you write 3 steps. Villain, I will put you in dungeon. A, actual intercepts is A, B, infinity. Because it is parallel to z-axis, means it will meet z-axis at infinite distance. And then fractional intercept is A by A, B by B, infinity by C. So this is 1 1 infinity. And Miller indices, HKL, is 110, and it is written as 110 plane. So If you have only 1 0, may it be 1 1 0 or 0 1 0, or it is sorry, it is only 1 0, like 1 1 0, or it has 0 1 1 or 1 0 1. Doesn't matter. When there are two ones or two numericals and other one is 0, then obviously that plane is parallel to a particular axis. If last one is 0, it is parallel to z axis. If first one is 0, parallel to x axis. If the second one is 0, parallel to y axis. So I will ask you another one. Supposing a is equal to, x-intercept. I give you no x-intercept is say a y-intercept say 2b and z-intercept is c by 2. So find out the Miller indices for such a plane which will have actual intercept in the x-axis a exactly on the unit vector, and y-intercept will be 2 times the unit vector, and the z-intercept is half of the unit vector. So such a plane and its parallel sisters will be uniquely designated by which 3 HKL values? Miss Mishra, you are not Mr. Dhal, are you here? Still here? Oh, don't worry. I'm maintaining restraint, because when change will come to all, not to the students alone, but to the teacher who was a little loose in his tongue. There is no necessity to have a loose tongue. Maybe I struggled and I became outrageous before some time. Maybe my nature is now is under a transformation for the last so many years. I have been um, uh, having a loose tongue sometimes, maybe for some reason, but that is unwarranted, not required. That maybe my physical, mental being, I'm sorry, is not approving nowadays. Maybe I'm yet to know, investigate that. I'm still under self introspection. I will select Miss Swine. Directly tell me the HKL.
So 241.
4?
241.
241 she says. Is it okay? Is she, do you agree with her? 241. No comma. It is conventionally, commas are avoided. Let's start. Okay, mute yourself, Miss Swine. Let's see whether you are correct or not. Now, let us first write the actual intercept. A to B, C by 2. Then divide by the individual unit vectors to get the fractional intercept. 1, 2, 1 by 2. Then the reciprocal will be the Miller indices. 1, 1 by 2, 2. The reciprocal of the fractional indices are Miller indices, but still there is a fraction. We have to eliminate fraction by multiplying with the smallest factor. So if you multiply by 2, the actual Miller indices will be 2, then 1, then 4. What happened? You told me 241. I'm getting 214. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? A to B, C by 2. A by A to B by B, C2, C by 2 by C. So becomes 1, 2, 1 by 2. Then reciprocal of 1 is 1, reciprocal of 2 is 1 by 2, reciprocal of half is 2. So, and then if you multiply by 2, then serially, 2, 1, 4, just like, no, this is wrong. Yes or no? Who have done 214? It looks like as if it is 214, but actually it is 214 plane in between bracket. Now, all of you will raise your hand. There is no, difficulty. When I asked who opposed Miss Swine, nobody said that. Of course, you must be wondering there is no class, but still I'm getting a feel of many of you, but others, you are remaining totally alienated. Even Mr. Misra, whom I fondly call him six pack, is also not participating. He is a silent spectator. He is very attentive, but he is little scared of answering. Might be for some reason. His six packs might not be allowing him to do that. Miss Sodhani, yes, okay. That I think will be the end of today's session. We cannot go today because I will need then one session. Tomorrow will be the last, not today. Just have a look to this one. Just have a glimpse of the thing that we are going to cover. We have already got. Would you take another example to find the HKL values? Do you want it or you can do it? No, you don't have any, priorities. Now see, you see these slides, crystallographic planes and X-ray diffraction, which we have done. There are so many different families of parallel planes with different D values. So I've already told you, and now see, yes, I didn't ask you one last question. Supposing you have a plane standing like this. Standing like this. The head is stooping down on the Z pole, and the left leg is lying on the x-axis unit vector, and the right leg is resting on the unit vector B. And the head is stooping down. It's not parallel to any axis or any plane. It is having two legs stretched, head stooped down, hitting onto the pole, Z-axis pole. In that case, what will be the identity mark? A, B, C are the real intercepts, not A by 2 or 2B or C by 3 or 3C, exactly A, B, C. Such a plane and its family will be characterized by Mr. Khan, M.A. Khan.
Sir, 111.
Precisely 111, because it is A, B, C. This is real intercept. Fractional intercept is A by A, B by B, C by C. It is 1, 1, 1. And also the reciprocal is also same. 1, 1, 1. So this is a 111 plane. So we will confine our discussion to the cubic lattices. And tomorrow, now see, I have already told you this is a 2-3-3 plane. Commas are avoided. The copy and paste which I made is a defective one. The commas ultimately are avoided. 2-3-3 plane, but this fellow from whom I have copied has a comma in between. So first you divide by the respective unit vectors, then take reciprocal. And so this is 100 plane, means this plane is parallel to the YZ plane. 110 means it is only parallel to the Z axis. 11 plane about which I was just talking. And 1 bar means minus. Bar, it is in the negative x-axis, the other side. Same 100 and 1 bar 00, they're same with respect to the planar spacing. But we can have a bar mark to indicate the intercept is on the negative side of a certain axis when you have assigned arbitrarily the directions of positive x, positive y, and positive z. With this, we conclude today's session. Tomorrow, we will be taking off the remaining part, that is Miller indices for cubic lattices, and the formula and the geometry and the X-ray diffraction, the Bragg's equation, that and solve some problems. And today, thank you for giving me a patient hearing and extending the time. I'm stopping the recording first. Bye-bye.